So we have been on quite a journey together. So it's been 11 weeks. I know it's gone really quick. 7 hidden sources of burnout that we have looked at. And if you've been here from the beginning, I want you to know something right now. The fact that you kept showing up, kept listening, kept nodding along, definitely not a small thing. And that is the beginning. It's the beginning of something. So welcome back to the Rip and Rise Roadmap. I'm Dr. Muyeba, Consultant Psychiatrist and Addiction and ADHD Specialist. I'm also a lifestyle physician helping professional women maintain a vibrant and fruitful life. These professional women are absolutely brilliant at managing their careers, but feel burned out despite doing everything right. And today we bring everything together. So everything comes up. This is week 12 of our final episode in this series. And I want you to do 2 things for me right here. First, I want to give you the full picture of what we've been building. And second, I just want to answer some of the questions that have been landing in my DMs or in conversations and also in comments. And some of you have been emailing me over the past few weeks. And because some of you were too polite to ask out loud, I thought I'll share the answers here. And I also want to make sure that you leave here with clarity. Really important that we make things clear and live in this place with clarity. So let's go back to where we started. So in week 1, I asked you, why are you still exhausted even though you are doing everything right? And then we talked about that burnout is not a personal failure, but that's an acknowledged load. And over the past 11 weeks, we have named that load clearly, honestly, and without softening it. We started from the outside, navigating someone else's addiction, that hypervigilance, the hiding of car keys, the checking that they're breathing at 2 a.m., that crash that comes even after treatment begins, because your nervous system has been running in crisis mode, and that's been happening for years. And then we moved inward, the relationship stress, that emotional thermostat, the woman who manages the climate of every room that she walks into and wonders why she never truly rests. And then we looked at the strong one pattern. Yeah, this resonated with a lot of you. The identity level exhaustion of being the person everyone calls in crisis, the one who always seems to cope, the one whom strength has become a cage for them. And then the mental health, that anxiety that's inside, that hides inside all the achievements, the depression that looks like functioning, that trauma that wears productivity as a disguise. So we explored that. And then we looked at unmanaged ADHD, the woman who's been compensating for decades and calling it dedication, when actually her brain just needed a different kind of support. Then the spiritual drought, that drift that happens when life becomes so full that the things which feed our soul gets quietly moved to the bottom of the list. And we just don't seem to recover that connection, just gone. And then last, we looked at financial stress that nobody knows about, that hidden weight that keeps your threat response activated, your cortisol elevated, and your decision making quietly compromised. So that's it. 7 sources. 7 places where burnout hides in plain sight. And here's what I want you to hold on to as we close the series. You were not burning out because you were weak. No, that's not true. You were burning out because you were carrying an unacknowledged load with no language for it or space to name it, and no community to support you with that. But that changes today. So before I take your questions, just one final thought. Let's go through the REAP framework, and that is to reflect, to envision, to analyze, and to plan. Not as a productivity tool, but a restoration tool. And then the RISE, where we look at the reset, to implement, sustain, and enjoy, is not about bouncing back, but rather it's about building a life you don't need to recover from. That is the work, and that is what this series has been preparing you for. Not just coping better, but carrying that load differently. Now on to the questions. I'd asked for your DMs and I read your comments, and I just want to take time and answer honestly. I recognize myself in almost every source you named. Where do I even begin? Well, you start exactly where you are. Not with everything, but just one thing at a time, one change. And the woman who resonated with every single episode is often the woman who's been minimizing all of it. And she's been telling herself, well, it's not that bad. Because individually, none of it seems catastrophic. But together, that's a whole different kind of heavy load, a very heavy load. And here's the practical answer. Why not take the Busy Woman quiz? It's designed to surface the dominant pattern, the source that is costing you the most energy right now. And that is where you start. Because when you do deal with that, there's a ripple effect. Not the full overhaul, but just start with the first honest step, and then you move to the next thing. So now on to question 2. I've been the strong one for so long. I don't even know who I am without that role. How do I get on without everything falling apart? And thank you for that question. I really hear this so often. I want to say it clearly. You don't have to let it all go at once. You interrupt the pattern one small moment at a time. And that could look like delaying that automatic response, or you allow someone else to feel the discomfort of figuring out something for themselves. Or you say, I don't have capacity for that right now. And you don't have to over-explain. And here's what I want you to know. The world does not fall apart when you put some of it down. Never. And what actually happens is the people around you begin to grow because you're giving them that responsibility. And then you begin to breathe. So on to question 3. So my loved one is in recovery now and I feel worse than I did when in crisis. Is there something wrong with me? Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And just to give some meat to that answer, let me tell you about someone I'll call Beverly. And Beverly is a secondary school deputy head teacher. She's meticulous, composed, the kind of woman parents trusted on site. And for 4 years, she had been managing her husband's alcohol dependence, and along with her full-time leadership role and managing 2 teenage children. So you can imagine quite a lot on her plate. And she said, during those 4 years when her husband was struggling, she never cried once, not once. Instead, she organized, she researched, she attended appointments, she covered for him at family events. She kept the household running with that military precision. And then the day he entered the residential treatment center, it was as if the crisis was over. And for Beverly, instead of you imagined that she'd be relieved, she fell completely apart. And why was that happening? It was as if she was exhausted in a way that she couldn't explain. She was tearful at nothing, unable to concentrate, getting ill every other week. I just don't understand, she said. This is what I prayed for. Why do I feel like I'm drowning now? And I remember telling Beverly, and I want to tell you this in response to your question. So your nervous system spent 4 years running a covert operation. It was monitoring, anticipating, performing normality in front of the children while privately holding the crisis together. It did not have permission to feel the weight of it at the time because you were too busy holding the line. And then recovery created that space. And then grief sort of like moved into that space. The exhaustion that Beverly felt, and that you may be feeling as well, is not a sign that things aren't improving. It is a sign that your body finally trusts that it is a safe enough space to go to that place to really process that. And Beverly needed her own support too, not as a footnote for her husband's recovery, but the main event for her. So give it time, give it gentleness, and please get your own support. Their treatment doesn't automatically treat your trauma. No, it doesn't do that. You've lived through this too. So on to question 4. I suspect that I might have ADHD, but I was never diagnosed. I'm now in my 40s. Is it too late to find out? And that was the question in the DM. Well, it's absolutely not too late. You can have your diagnosis late, whether it's in your 40s, 50s, or even beyond, is one of the most profound turning points I see in my clinical practice. And the women who come to me after late diagnosis don't leave devastated. They leave with language. This now has a name. This is my neurology and not my character. So if you suspect ADHD, the starting point is your GP. And then you can request a referral for an assessment. And while you wait, one of the best places to begin educating yourself is a website called Attitude Magazine. I'll put the link in the description notes. It's a leading online resource for adults living with ADHD. Expert articles, webinars, practical strategies, all viewed by a clinical advisory board, so you can trust it. Because knowledge is already a form of support, and I encourage you to have a look. So the next question number 5. I feel disconnected from God. I go through the motions at church, but the intimacy just isn't there. And I feel ashamed of that. And my answer to you is, please release the shame. Spiritual drought is not a spiritual failure. It's that natural consequence of pouring out without being replenished, of showing up exhausted to a place that deserves your presence and giving what's left instead of what is true. God hasn't moved, and you have simply been running on empty for a very long time. You do not need a spiritual overhaul. No, you need a protected space. Even just 15 minutes before the world gets to you. Not to be productive in that space, not to plan or perform, just to be present. Trust me, you will see the benefit. Start there and let the intimacy return at its own pace, and it will. So question 6. I carry financial responsibility for my extended family and I feel trapped. I don't know how to change something this entrenched without destroying my relationships. Well, thank you for that question. I want to be honest with you. This is one of the most complex situations I see, particularly for women from cultures and communities where financial provision is deeply tied to family loyalty, respect, and love. I'm not asking you to choose between your family and your financial well-being. I don't think that's fair. What I'm asking you is to stop carrying it in silence, because the silence is where that burnout lives. And one honest conversation with a financial advisor, perhaps a trusted friend, or even a therapist can begin to loosen the lock on something that has felt permanent. Perhaps also a boundary with a family member does not have to be dramatic or damaging. It can be gentle. It can be necessary. Because you cannot give from depletion indefinitely. And the people who love you deserve your sustainable presence, not your gradual collapse, which is likely to happen if you just keep on working and working to fund those other things. So this series has helped me see myself more clearly, the DM said. But I'm worried that once I stop watching, I'll just go back to the same pattern. How do I make sure this actually sticks? And I really love that question, because that's the most important question anyone could have asked. And I'm going to be honest, insight alone does not produce change. So much information there, but it doesn't automatically produce change. You can understand your burnout patterns completely and still live inside them. What actually produces change, I believe, is community and having a structure and that ongoing reflection. So you need a space where this work continues, where you are surrounded by women who understand that hidden load, and where you can ask the questions without having to edit yourself, where someone is helping you move from reflection to actual action. And that is exactly why I'm launching something I've been building towards for a long time, the Reaping Women community. I'm restoring it starting this May 2026. It will be a free community for professional women who are done carrying that unacknowledged load in silence. And this is where we might go deeper in some areas, and we'll do it together. So every week there'll be a guided reflection, some practical tools, honest conversations, and all that is rooted in the Reap and Rise framework, grounded in lifestyle medicine to maintain that sustainable, vibrant life. And for those women of faith, you're welcome here. All of you are welcome here. This is not a passive inbox. It is an active community. Let's build together. Your story is the main narrative, not an afterthought. And if you've been watching this series and thinking, I need somewhere where this work will continue, then that's the space for you. The link to join is in the description, and it opens this May. I'll give you the date shortly in one of the shorter videos to tell you more about it. And I would love to see you inside. Why not join us? Tell your friends, tell your aunties, tell your girlfriends, tell everyone to join us. And to close this series, I just want to say one final thing. You came here because something resonated, because somewhere in these 11 weeks you heard something that described you perhaps more precisely than you were used to being described. That recognition matters, because you cannot heal what you haven't named. You cannot address what you haven't acknowledged, and you certainly cannot rise from a place you don't yet understand. But you have done the hard part. You have sat with the uncomfortable questions. You have reflected. Now it's time to envision, to analyze, and to plan, and then to rise. Not to a perfect life, but to a sustainable one. We need to be sustainable, and not to carrying less, but to carrying differently, because the Lord is not going anywhere. You were never meant to do this alone, and now you don't have to. Join the Reaping Women community, and you'll find the link below. I'm Dr. Catherine Muyeba. Thank you for being here, and look after yourselves, and I'll see you on the inside.